Okay, Rafal. So um, the floor is all yours to talk about the OpenMRS SDK and what updates you have.
Okay, thanks, Bert. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so I see some experienced devs around. And yeah, we had some calls in the past around SDK, and we've seen some demos of SDK already. So I will not be focusing on what was already covered for SDK. And yeah, maybe I will focus on the latest features that were added some a month or 2 months ago, and that was better support for building distros and built-in support for Docker. And yeah, I'll be doing a demo as well, so hopefully you can see it. And I just wanted to share some statistics about SDK. Go to Bintray, where we have the SDK distributed. You can go to statistics and learn that we've got 300 downloads over the last 30 days. And we also gather statistics from OpenMRS SDK internally, and that is when the user agrees to participate in gathering statistics. So we can track active users, and we have about 70 active users. Yeah, we are hoping the number to grow, and that's one of the goals of this call, to make people more aware and to start using them. I'm using it every day, the sole developing day, and we are hearing from different people that it's helpful. And yeah, let's get down to what is the support for distributions. So basically, when you start working with SDK, you need to set up a server, and you just do it by issuing the command as setup. And it has a wizard which works just as a server. You can bring your server, and then you need to set up a distribution or a platform. When you select the distribution, you will have a choice to point to an existing distribution of OpenMRS, like reference application, and then you will also have an option to set up a platform, which will be the plain OpenMRS platform. So when you set up a distribution, you may decide to start from a clean platform and build and add some modules on top of that. But also you can set up it based on a distribution like reference application. I will choose to set up it based on platform, and I can, when I choose that, I have an option to select which version of platform I want my distribution on. I just add it. So whenever you run the server, it's done in debug mode. And if you don't do that and you leave the default option of debugging, you will be still able to run the server in the debug mode, but you will have to specify the debug parameter when you run the server. So you need to have your server to be set up for debug mode. So I just specify the debug port and it will be available. And yeah, that's pretty much what's needed. We'll also see that you'll be able to select JDK to use for running the server, since we are currently in a state where OpenMRS platform before version 2.0 required Java 7, and OpenMRS platform 2.0 and above require Java 8. We give an option to configure it for this specific server that you're setting up, and you can either provide your another JDK. SDK also members used before. So, for example, I previously specified Java 7 for running some other server, and this option appears here as my second option. But I also still have this third option to specify another one. So my Java home is configured to JDK 8, so I will use that for running platform version 2.0. So you have basically set up a server. Now, servers are stored in your user profile, Windows. The path is C users, your username, and directory OpenMRS. And I can find my distro here, the server setup. And you can see two files here, two properties files. First one is distro file. If you open that file, it contains the entire configuration for your distribution. And you basically specify in this file what needs to be installed for your distribution. So currently we just have OpenMRS or and no modules. We can also name here our distribution and specify version. So you can either write this file and here additional entries and modules, but also this file is automatically starts deploying modules to your server. So if I do deploy, I can either use the wizard or will ask me for everything it's needed. So if you're searching for the server, then what would you like to deploy? And I would like to deploy, for example, module. And I can say which module I want by specifying its artifact ID, and then the module orients checks which versions are available. I can choose to install the latest release version. And yeah, so the module is deployed successfully. And now when I open up this distro file, I can see that the module added here. And I can do as many modules as I want. I can add as many modules as I want to my distribution. So another useful module is OpenWebApp. So let's add that. Actually, let me show you how to use the command line for that. So I can specify server ID right here, and also I could specify a version also. That's the version, but I can't remember what is the version, so I will left it out. And the available versions, and I will be able to select one. And put here. Okay, so now the nice part is that you can take this file and put it in your Git repository, in your modules repository, or distribute it in any way you want. I can put it in my workspace, for example, create a new directory. Okay. And now when you go to set the directory, you can call this setup command, and it will look inside that directory for somehow. So I have my distro, my other distro, and it gives me an option to install my distro in version 1.0 from current directory. I can do. And it asks me all the same questions which are required for this specific instance of the server. But as you can see, it already copies OpenMRS web app and the two modules that are part of my distro to modules folder of my server. And I can easily continue to set up my server. I haven't specified it. Let's try again. So this is a very simple way of creating an OpenMRS distribution. You just need one file and OpenMRS SDK, and that's it. And also, what's nice about it is that we added Docker support for distributions. So there's a command in OpenMRS SDK build distro. Needs if you don't provide it, you will be asked for it. Meaning in the directory you want your Docker files to be generated. You can use the default, you can use the directory, and it will basically download all required modules and create configuration file for Docker. We provide Docker composed file as well, and this how is
Sorry, Rahul,
the whole set of them.
Can you show again what was the command
Yes.
that you ran to create the Docker file? Or did that?
It was OpenMRS SDK build distro.
Thanks.
And it created all those files. So we have here OpenSWR, we have all modules here. It also created a Docker file, which is an image of OpenMRS with the WAR and modules. So you can publish such an image in Docker Hub if you wish. It's based on Tomcat 7 with Java 8. And it has some extra configuration. This one is, for example, for supporting Unicode encoding OpenMRS. And we envision this configuration to be here. For MySQL. But
Rafal, can you repeat that last comment you made? Your audio was garbled.
Okay, so we envision the Docker configuration to be mature enough to be used in production, and we hope to tweak it in a way that is the most performant for OpenMRS. So currently we are using the default images for MySQL and also for Tomcat, but we may soon replace the default image with our custom image, which will be tweaked specifically for OpenMRS. And as for example, we tweaked the Tomcat configuration to I'll speak used in production, so we'll need to reach out to people running OpenMRS in production and ask for their configs and my business. In this configuration, you can see two services. We have MySQL servers and OpenMRS My Distro. So we have two containers. First is for MySQL, and the other is for Tomcat and OpenMRS. And also we have volume. And this is the best way to basically configure your MySQL to store data that is all database that is used in OpenMRS in a separate Docker volume. It allows you to easily backup OpenMRS database and move the volume around, even update MySQL. So it's good to have it in separate volume. And having that configuration, you can basically Docker toolbox, and there is a new Docker for Windows and Docker for Mac, which doesn't require using the specific terminal for Docker commands in VirtualBox, but I'm using still the old one, and all I have to do to use this configuration and to run is Docker compose up, and it will start up the image of OpenMRS, the database and the Tomcat, and be able to access server. So on Windows, it's exposed under this IP, and you can point it to OpenMRS.
Yeah, on the Mac with the latest Docker, it's just localhost.
Yeah, on Windows, it's the same as need to start. It's true. It's all running inside Docker. I didn't have to install MySQL nor Tomcat, so it's very convenient. But as I said, currently this configuration is prepared for production. So there is no, for example, debugging enabled. We also hope to provide an additional config file, and which can be used for actual debugging and expose debug ports for Tomcat, and also it will give an easy access to MySQL database. Yeah, so that's in some later release of OpenMRS SDK. Right now, it's prepared for production use only. Do people have any questions?
Yeah, there's several questions in the notes.
Sorry, I can't hear you if you're speaking.
There's yeah, several questions. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we have them in notes. How do new versions of platform or RefApp get into SDK? So the SDK fetches artifacts from Maven repository. So whatever is released or deployed to our Maven repository, it's available in SDK. OpenWeb currently but some to the factory, the exciting factory.
Sorry, Rafal, your last comment was garbled.
Okay, so OpenWebs are fetched from, we currently have just one OpenWeb app released to Bintray, and that's the only OpenWeb app available in SDK.
But is it anything that is deployed to Bintray would be available?
We from Bintray we look only for open web apps, and for the rest of artifacts we check Maven repository. It is possible to configure your local Maven to point to some different repository, like Bintray repository, Bintray Maven repository, but SDK doesn't do that for you. And you can virtually provide any Maven repository in your settings XML file in Maven, and the SDK will be checking all those repositories that you added there as well. So under the hood, it uses Maven dependency plugin to fetch artifacts, and yeah, it can support as many Maven repositories as you want.
And
there's another questions.
And then it's using the what's it using to determine whether it should show up in the list?
You mean
when you do okay, an initial setup, it says, oh, here's which version of OpenMRS do you want to build this on, like which version of the platform? Just wondering how that list is built and how does it change 6 months from now.
Okay, so it's always gives you an option, the first option which is a snapshot version, and then I believe 4 released versions.
Okay.
It's suggested in the last makes.
Sorry, that last comment you made was garbled as well. I don't know if you have extra things running on your computer that you can turn off that might help.
Okay, so for performance, suggests for major their newest, their highest maintenance release version. So it's a bit different for platform, but for the rest, it's always the last for latest releases. Any plans for MariaDB support? So the last time I tested running, I believe, reference application with MariaDB, it didn't succeed. And thus we didn't give an option to run reference application on MariaDB. It can be, so you can provide a URL to MariaDB when you set up a server and test it yourself. If you set up MariaDB locally prior to that, we could but yeah, we didn't. Does the SDK play well with J? I haven't used JN. I'm using basically for building Java 8 and for running servers. SDK supports selecting JDK. So I don't need JN. I haven't tested it with JN either.
Yeah, for folks that are on, folks I know at least on the Mac, it makes it vastly simpler to switch between versions. So just in terms of on the, but it does work on Mac, Linux, and Windows. I just thinking in terms of when you're asking like which JDK you want to use, JEnv might give you the ability to just say I want 1.7 or I want 1.8 and set it in that folder, and then it would always run that version.
Okay, so SDK is a Maven plugin. So if JEnv supports Maven, then the SDK should run just fine within that configuration. Any plans to include full platform? Right, so we'll just need to start maintaining file. And that repository will be
Sorry, Rafal.
file specific.
Your last comment was garbled
Yeah?
again. Sorry.
So we would have to specify a distribution and for the platform, which is not quite right, but we'll have a distribution set up in GitHub and other the REST module and the OR module and the WAR file we use for that platform. And then you will be able to install the full platform via SDK.
Can you say that a little a different way? I didn't quite follow.
Yeah, so web and open web app. Basically, and the OpenMRS set up a distribution which is basically named OpenMRS platform, and we add their open web app and the REST module. So basically, what I did in the demo is this small file. Once we have this small file released to our Maven repository in a jar to have the full platform available from OpenMRS SDK. So we haven't done that yet, but it's not much work and can be easily done. Just the fact that it needs to be whenever version of a platform, we need to make sure that we also release this OpenMRS distro properties file with it, so that it's aware of the platform.
Okay, yeah, because it's not really the platform unless you include those modules.
Correct. Yeah. What is the format of the distro property file? The format is, as you can see, it's Java. That's right. You can basically follow the convention when the property starts from OMA, it's a module. When it starts from war, it's war. When it starts from OA, it's OA. And there's artifact ID. And also next it can come. So for the best example of OpenMRS distro file is provided from the reference application distribution. So if you go to the OpenMRS distro and look for OpenMRS distro properties file, you can see almost all port syntax. So, for example, we have serialization extreme module added here, where you can customize the type, which is OMOD and not jar as all other versions, as other modules. And also you can customize group ID for a module if you want. So not only modules from which OpenMRS group ID can be installed, but also PAH and any you can. And there are some additional sets you can provide. Your distribution supports H2, and if this value is set to true, the SDK gives you an option to install the distribution H2 database. And also you can provide a custom SQL file with an initial version of the database. For reference application, we'll use it to speed up the setup. So this SQL file was created from a database after setting up reference application with all liquid-based changes that are required, so that when someone else tries to run this application using distro.
Are you doing that manually?
The reference application 2.4.
I'm sorry, your response was garbled again. I didn't hear your answer.
Yes, we created it manually.
Okay.
And it was created for OpenMRS reference application 2.4. So it still works for OpenMRS 2.5, but there are some additional changes which need to be run on top of that, so it's not that.
Yeah. Well, one of our
so it's not as fast as it could be, but still.
we have some tickets out for Trunk to add versioning, to break the liquid-based change sets based on version, and then to do something very much like what you're saying, where we create a snapshot for each version that gets released of the SQL schema, so we don't have to start from an old version and apply all the change sets every time. But I think getting that working is going to require automating that snapshot. So maybe that will help the SDK as well.
Right. Okay, I think that's all what I wanted to cover. Feel free to ask them. There are some suggestions for Docker Compose. We specifically made the service names that way to and them to include the distro name, so that you can run on your computer a number of distributions.
Yeah, but those
So
Docker Compose
Docker
Compose
names need to be-
namespaces those automatically. So if you look at
Right.
if you looked at your Docker containers, they would be called like, target / OpenMRS my distro, like.
By the name, it's some random name that Docker assigns to a container.
It uses the folder
Mhm.
name and then adds the service name after it, and then it will add a 1 or a 2, and so it's scoped to that specific Docker Compose folder. So if you name the folder, something relevant to your, something like your my distro, then you could have my distro MySQL, my distro DB, or actually better than MySQL would be my distro DB and my distro, OpenMRS or whatever, or web or whatever you would call the layer. When I look at Docker Compose file, the common convention I see is that people name the services based on the functionality. Like there's a DB service and a the other advantage of taking that approach is that those names by default become available within that network, so that your connections can be like if you name your database service DB, then you can refer to that database and get to it within other Docker containers just by using DB as the name of the server in your database URL.
Okay. We could give it a try. I believe I've seen a bit different behavior when it comes to assigning names to Docker containers. Maybe it's changed between versions of Docker. I don't know. For me, it was some random name that it used when I haven't specified.
If you
Windows
just use Docker, it'll assign a random name. If you're using Docker Compose, which is where the services are named, it will create the names as you saw in your VirtualBox. It's creating the names based on what you put in your service as your service names. So in the Docker Compose model, it makes it much easier to kind of connect to things and find things. Anyway, it's just a suggestion. That's just the conventions I've seen is people don't typically make these long names or application-specific names of their services in a Docker Compose.
Okay. Good. We'll look into that.
The other was what I've seen as a prevailing convention, and it's mentioned in the documentation for Docker, is to have your Docker Compose be configured for development, and then have a production YAML file that overrides and sets production settings, so that you can just do it, Docker Compose up and and work on it, and then when you want to deploy in production, you add the reference to your production YAML.
Okay. So I was going to do it the other way, but well, if it's a convention, then probably we should change the behavior to default.
Yeah, I gave
to development.
Yeah, I gave a link to the documentation.
Okay. Yeah, there is also a suggestion to update pages and floss manuals to refer to the latest SDK.
Yeah, just a note on that. I've applied for a organization account for Gitbook, and I think that might be the place we want to migrate our at least our guides and books, if not maybe a lot of our documentation. I'm hoping to get. I'm actually thinking we could have GCI tasks to migrate part or all of our guides to Gitbook.
Is Gitbook a replacement for floss manuals, or is it a completely different service?
It's completely different. It's just like GitHub, but for documentation.
Okay. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, I saw projects using it, and it's basically like the Git wiki, or Git IO, the Git pages without the code, and with a little bit more fanciness to supply or support manuals, like being able to easily convert it to PDF or EPUB or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the books are done via repos, so you can just like forking and starring them and subscribing to them and tracking changes is all done just like a Git repo.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. I think Darius is trying to say let's not get distracted. Yeah.
Actually, I tried to update our guide, but something didn't work on floss manuals and gave up. So
yeah, I've never been able to edit them.
yeah, so the SDK was created mostly and contributed mostly by Soldevel developers, and I would like to thank you them. They did a lot of work on that, and practically they created him from scratch. So yeah, thanks a lot, Soldevel. And we are hoping to have them working on it sometime before the end of this year to add support for the latest Docker on Windows and Mac, which doesn't require Docker Toolbox, and also some improvements in the Docker configuration files. we may include your suggestions, Burg, then as well.
All right. Well, awesome. Yes, congratulations and thank you to all the effort that's gone into the SDK. Rafael, your leadership and the Soldevelo programmers, everyone that's contributed. I I'm excited to see the SDK kind of on the path and really fulfilling kind of the dream of not just being a tool for someone doing a tutorial, but supporting both the beginning programmer, getting them up and working quickly, but also helping experienced developers be productive and more efficient. Because it seems like that's the benefits the community overall, and it also gets people kind of following best practices, and um, it also gives us an opportunity, when there are redundant or kind of I don't know, kind of automated or repeated steps in the development cycle to help people with that. I guess one other question I had about the SDK is when you deploy in Docker, are you using volumes such that you can, like, is it pretty easy to deploy it in a Docker container and have an active like development connection to it to like do real-time debugging?
As I said, we haven't exposed parts for debugging, so we need an external. We need to tweak the configuration for debugging. So currently, it's just for production where debugging is disabled.
Okay. Is that on the roadmap for it?
Yeah, we hope to add that by the end of this year.
Is there a SDK roadmap somewhere?
Not really. We have some issues around in Jira, but not everything is covered yet. So yeah, when I get some time to create those issues, I'll be posting them to talk. So I typically manage it by creating a new version in Jira and assigning issues to that version. And those issues which have a version assigned will be the next in queue to be implemented. Yeah, but yeah, I need to create more issues and post it on Talk, and yeah, it will be our roadmap for the next month.
Well, hopefully we get. We're working toward getting our Confluence and Jira upgraded, and I think the latest versions of Jira have greater support for defining, turning milestones and things into a roadmap. So hopefully, if we get Jira upgraded, it will assist in communicating a roadmap.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.